Welcome back to Lions News Fan Report, your go-to place for everything Detroit Lions, where we don't just report the news, we dive deep, we analyze every angle, and we bring the passion and energy that true fans deserve. Today, we have a story that is quietly unfolding behind the scenes but could have massive implications for the Lions' defense this season and beyond. It's one of those situations where at first glance, everything seems calm, maybe even boring to the casual observer. But if you look a little closer, you start to realize there's a lot more at play, and honestly, it's the kind of subtle roster movement that can either propel a team toward a championship or leave them scrambling when adversity hits. So, buckle up because we're about to get into it. If you remember, heading into last season, the Lions' secondary was a massive point of focus. Everyone knew that if Detroit wanted to take the next step, not just making the playoffs but actually winning playoff games, pushing deep into January and maybe even February, they had to get better at defending the pass. They had to be tougher, smarter, faster. And for a while, it looked like they had nailed it. With Carlton Davis III locking down one side of the field, the rookie phenom Terrion Arnold showing flashes of brilliance on the other, and the scrappy, underrated Amick Robertson handling the nickel duties, Detroit's secondary looked poised to finally match the physical, blue-collar identity that Dan Campbell has been instilling since day one. But then, like so often happens in the NFL, the injury bug showed up, and it showed up with a vengeance. Davis went down, Arnold battled through his own nicks and bruises, and suddenly what had looked like a strength was starting to feel like a vulnerability. Despite all the adversity, Amick Robertson held the line. He was tough, he was reliable, and he played some of the best football of his career when Detroit needed it most. And that's important to remember as we start talking about where things stand now, because it would be easy to overlook just how valuable Robertson was in the middle of the chaos. Fast forward to the offseason, and Detroit made some aggressive moves to shore up that secondary even further. They brought in DJ Reed, the former Jets and Seahawks cornerback, a player known for his versatility, his toughness, and his leadership. They also signed Avonte Maddox, one of the better pure nickel corners in the league when healthy, a guy who helped the Eagles reach a Super Bowl just 2 seasons ago. 2 big-time moves, 2 players who don't just add depth but who expect to start, expect to play in major roles. And then, of course, they used high draft capital to bring in Ennis Rakestraw Jr., an absolute stud from Missouri who, if he can stay healthy, projects as a future star. All of which brings us to the big question that nobody seems to want to answer directly, but is definitely being asked behind closed doors. Where exactly does Amick Robertson fit into this new-look Lions secondary? And more importantly, is he even going to be part of it when the season kicks off? Ralph Vacchiano of Fox Sports recently dropped a bombshell when he suggested that Amick Robertson could be a surprise trade candidate as we head toward the NFL draft. Now, if you're hearing that and thinking, wait, why would the Lions trade a guy who just had one of the best seasons of his career, a guy who helped stabilize their defense when everything else was falling apart? Well, you're not alone. That's exactly the kind of head-scratching move that deserves a deeper look, because at first glance, it feels counterintuitive. But think about it from the front office's perspective. First, Robertson is entering the final year of his deal. After this season, he becomes a free agent. If Detroit doesn't extend him, and with all the new additions, it's not clear they will, he could walk away for nothing. Maybe they get a compensatory pick down the line, but that's a big maybe, and the Lions know it. Second, Robertson's value has never been higher. He played well last year. Really well. Other teams around the league saw it. In a league where finding even one good nickel corner is like finding a unicorn, Robertson could fetch a pretty solid return, maybe a mid-round draft pick, maybe even more if a bidding war breaks out. And third, and this is maybe the biggest factor, the Lions feel like they have options now. They believe in Maddox. They believe in Rakestraw. They even believe in DJ Reed's ability to kick inside if needed. That flexibility gives them the luxury to consider moving a guy like Robertson, especially if it helps them fill another hole on the roster or stockpile draft assets for the future. It's classic roster management. Sell high, retool on the fly, and never stop looking for ways to get better. Of course, that's the cold, analytical side of the argument. The emotional side, the side that fans and players and even coaches sometimes feel more strongly, is a lot messier. Because Robertson isn't just a stat line. He's a tone setter. He plays with heart. He plays with edge. He brings the kind of swagger and toughness that Dan Campbell loves. He's the kind of guy you go to war with, the kind of guy you want in your locker room when the games really start to matter. And here's something else to consider. What happens if Maddox gets hurt again? It's not an if so much as a when, Because as talented as Maddox is, staying healthy has been a constant battle for him. What happens if Reed tweaks something and has to miss a few games? What happens if the rookies aren't ready? Depth isn't just a luxury in the NFL. It's a necessity. Last year proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And if you trade Robertson now, you might be gambling that you'll be able to survive a war of attrition without him when it matters most. So, the Lions are faced with a brutally tough decision. Do they maximize Robertson's trade value now and trust their depth to hold up? Or do they hold on to him, knowing he might leave for nothing next year, but banking on his impact this season to help push them over the top? And it's not just about this season either. The Lions are building something bigger than a one-year run. They're building a program. They're building a culture. Every roster move they make send a message, not just to the locker room, but to future free agents, future draft picks, future stars who might want to come to Detroit. Trading a guy like Robertson could be seen as a cold, business-savvy move, or it could be seen as a betrayal of the culture they've spent years building. It's a delicate balance, and there's no easy answer. There's also the matter of compensation. If you're Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, you can't just give Robertson away. It has to be a deal that makes sense. It has to be a deal that clearly improves the team's long-term outlook without crippling their short-term chances. That's a narrow needle to thread, and it's why, even if Robertson is on the block, a trade isn't guaranteed. It would have to be the right offer, at the right time, for the right reasons. Meanwhile, don't expect Robertson to cause any drama. That's not who he is. By all accounts, he's loved in the locker room, respected by coaches, and fully committed to the team's mission. He's the kind of player who will keep his head down, keep grinding, and keep contributing no matter what happens. But make no mistake, he knows what's going on. Players always do. They know when their name is floating around in trade talks. They know when the writing might be on the wall. And that's another layer to this story. How does it affect the chemistry in the room? Does it create tension? Does it light a fire under everybody? Does it make guys play tighter, or does it galvanize them? So many questions, and the answers are anything but simple. But one thing is clear, whatever the Lions decide to do with Amick Robertson, it's going to have ripple effects, not just for this season, but for the trajectory of the entire franchise. And as fans, all we can do is watch, hope, and trust that the people in charge, the people who have brought us closer to greatness than we've been in decades, continue to make the right calls. Thanks for riding with me today. If you love this kind of deep dive into Lions news, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We've got so much more to cover as we head into the draft, through mini camps, training camp, and into what could be a historic season for Detroit. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Should the Lions trade Amick Robertson now while his value is high, or should they keep him for a run at the Super Bowl and worry about the future later? I'm dying to hear your takes. Thanks again for being part of the Lions News Fan Report family. Until next time, one pride, baby. Let's go get it.